Hello.
It's weird.
Yeah.
It's weird.
It's weird.
Light.
It is. I mean,
Very light.
I'm not in the kitchen. This is not a green screen. This is.
Oh.
There are things that I can pick up.
Actuality.
I'm in actuality of shelves. It's weird to be 1 o'clock. I feel strange swearing at this time of day.
Goats. I've been with you at different times of the day.
I mean, I'm lying. I feel fine swearing at this time of day. I can see daylight, which is also odd. Shall I do the disclaimer?
Yes.
Go for
Nice. Welcome. It's History After Dark, and today it is really all about the vulgarity, because it's certainly not dark. It is 1 p.m. on a Wednesday lunchtime here in the UK. This is History After Dark, and in part, fortunately, we called it that because this is the space where the three of us like to let our freak flags fly. We are the absolute paragon of decorum on our other platforms, and we need a space where we can indulge in our love of four-letter expletives. We are connoisseurs of swears, where we can engage in innuendo and general smut talk, and that is here. So with that being said, if you happen to be in an open plan office with a judgmental boss, put a headphone in. If you are in a classroom, don't be. Don't do that. If you're in a kitchen or a living room or a car with a small child, this small child's a problem. And I want to talk about Catherine's Timmy in a minute, because Timmy is a problem. We have merch. Check it out. Timmy is the kind of child that hears one vulgar thing one time, locks it away in his mind palace, takes it to school with him, sits down with his teacher. In my head, the teacher is Miss Honey from Miss Matilda. He then repeats this thing to the teacher, who, because she doesn't watch HAD, doesn't know the first cardinal rule of HAD, namely, if you don't know what it means, it's not for you, don't Google it. She Googles it. She's now traumatized and weeping and in the corner. You've been called to school to explain why Timmy understands and knows of this thing, and also you're being asked to help pay for the 12 weeks of therapy she now needs so that she stops babbling like a wreck. So put a headphone in. Alternatively, you can always watch on the playback here on the YouTubes. It is always worth watching us live, because we may say something that is so unspeakably depraved that for everybody's continued liberty, we need to yeet it into the sun. It's happened once before, which means one of three things. Either we're due another one, we've got better, unlikely, or our standards are now in hell. We just haven't noticed. The bar is now in. So, as we said, the rule is, if you don't know what it means, don't Google it. It's not for you. The other rule, and I say that, we hope you're all adults here, please. Although I have had the traumatizing realization that at least one child regularly watches us, but it's Catherine, so he has already got his own problem.
It's only the disclaimer. His father informed me. He lets him watch the disclaimer.
Yes, don't worry, I'm not a Timmy, which I love.
I'm not Timmy. I haven't told my teachers. That's exactly what he said to me. That makes it all right then.
It's all good. We hope, apart from that, the rest of you are adults, so you are free to make your own decisions. With that being said, this is not, nor will it ever be, a drinking game. We are not responsible for your renal functions. This will also never be legal advice. Please don't sue us. With all of that, this beautifully handcrafted, bespoke disclaimer, you know what this is. It's very clear what we're going to be doing today. If at any point on any of our platforms or here, I see anybody say something along the lines of, oh, I enjoy the history, but have you got to swear? It makes you sound unintelligent. Well, first of all, up your bum. And second of all, no. And I know what you're doing. What you want is you want one of us to pin that comment so that everybody else can shame you publicly, because you've got a kink for that kind of thing. And kinks are cool, but kinks without consent are not cool. And if you want somebody to stand on your bollocks in some Brighton sub-basement and call you a bellend, that's up to you, but pay for the privilege. This is not here for us to do that for you. We love you. Welcome. Let's do this thing.
Brilliant.
I'd do that if you paid me, to be fair.
Sorry. Depends how much.
I mean, we know, Catherine, we know.
Everyone has a price.
Everybody's got a price.
Yeah. Mine's a time machine. I still haven't got hold of Elon Musk, but I will.
Right. So you're going to stand on Elon Musk's bollocks
no,
and call him a bellend.
No, I'm just going to be his BFF.
Yeah.
That's what I want to call it, babe.
Because we would never imply that Elon Musk, or indeed anybody else in the public eye, would want to do anything like that. Because
Okay.
Perfect.
we
They're all
won't
angels.
even infer that anybody likes to get up to anything
No, they're all angels. They are
other
definitely.
than living a good, clean life.
Shall we talk about our next
Speaking
angel?
of good, clean lives, which wasn't, it wasn't.
No one
Yeah.
to know.
Yes.
Shall we speak about our next hero then?
Let's do it.
Okay. So don't ask how we got this for E. It is there. It's in the top.
Tenuous. Oh.
Tenuous.
Oh,
Yeah. We had to get this guy in. William Marshall, Earl of Pembroke. He was described as the greatest knight in his own lifetime. His biographer Thomas Ashbridge, whose book I have here, I must recommend it because I've looked at it so much ready to prepare for this that I have to recommend that book. He describes him as a forgotten hero, and Dan Jones describes him as the coolest man in medieval history. He's also the first, but it might be the first biography, but anyway, there is a biography of him, which I'm going to go into a little bit because that's how we have all our information about him, and it's an interesting story in itself. And he survived incredibly, which I'm sure the girls will go into in more detail, one of the most turbulent periods of English history. He's born during the anarchy, and he does remind me of Uhtred a little bit out of Last Kingdom, I have to say, because he seems to be able to remain loyal to whoever his master is, even though his masters don't. He serves 5 kings and 1 queen, arguably, and they don't get on, but he manages to sort of instill respect from the way he approaches everything and his loyalty and stuff. So he manages to keep alive. That's good, and prospers. So I'm going to tell you a bit more about where he comes from and all of that. But the concept even of being a knight grew up. So he's known as the greatest knight, but even the concept of knighthood grew up with him. Basically, a double hard bastard is what I've written down here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Double hard bastard, loyal to whoever he was serving, politically acute, which builds over time. Astute, excuse me.
I was going to say,
You know,
things better.
Yeah, he was a risk taker, and I think he was faithful to his wife. But I didn't do that bit of the research. But from what I remember, I think he was a faithful man. But we'll see. I don't know if either of you two have got anything on that.
Slight accusations about sleeping with queens.
Shh, don't spoil it.
Did
But
he
apparently-
start that? Or did they?
That was the tea in my bit.
I have a feeling they went after him. He wouldn't have done it if they didn't make him. So Thomas Ashbridge writes, he rose through the ranks, a peerless warrior, tournament champion, and paragon of chivalry. So this is why he's on our heroes list. And like I said, the biography. So he's the first knight, but I think he's probably one of the first people in British history to have a proper biography written about him. It was commissioned by his family almost straight after he died. He died in, well, I'll come back to that, but straight after he died. We know the scribe's name was John. That's about all we know. And he was probably Anglo-French. And this biography it came to light first in an auction in 1861.
Wow.
And it was not known about until then. And it was marked as a Norman French chronicle on English affairs. That's how it was catalogued in the auction. And there's this guy at the time called Sir Thomas Phillips, who's a bibliophile, clearly minted. And he bought it for apparently the extortionate sum of £380. I haven't looked up how much that would have been in 1861. And bought up other things in this auction as well. He was a self-proclaimed bibliophile, had over 60,000 manuscripts. This is the danger of personal collections, though, because he would sort of catalogue what he had, and he would publish the catalogue, but he didn't actually catalogue everything in his collection properly. So there was a guy called, Paul Mayer, who had been at that auction in 1861 as a sort of young undergraduate. And he'd seen this, been intrigued by it, and kept looking at the catalogue that Sir Philip's published to try and find if it was there. He'd sort of started to look through it and didn't understand what it was at the time, because just got to look through a couple of pages, but it intrigued him. Anyway, when Sir Philip died, he managed to Paul Mayer's managed to get the family eventually to let him have access to the catalogue, the actual library, if you like. And he whittled it down to 5,000 documents that he thought he might be part of, and then went in hand sorted these documents until he found it.
Wow.
Now, it is so it's never been properly catalogued, but it is 19,215 lines of rhyming French. So his biography, I mean, can you imagine? So he's found it, and then you've got to decipher this. But it is basically an account of the entire life of William Marshall. It's a copy, the original, and any other copy. It's the only surviving copy, and any other copy known and the original are gone, unless they're in someone else eccentric's bloody collection that they've not shared. And that is now held in the Morgan Library in New York. So, but that is where we get the information from. And I think that's really interesting because it is almost contemporary. It's written really soon after he dies. He dies in 1219, and it's completed within a decade. So it's completed soon after 1226.
Wow.
So
I was going to say that's
£300. You say it's over 300.
Sorry, both.
Did you say?
What?
Cat, go.
Did you say it sold for £300 in 1861?
£180.
£180.
£380.
380. I've got the currency converter up, so I can tell you that in 1860, £380, the equivalent in 2017 money, would be £22,469 and 10 pence. That is the equivalent. In 1860, that could buy you 25 horses. I don't know the quality of the horse. 71 cows. It was the equivalent of 1,900 days of wages for a skilled tradesperson.
Yeah. So probably more than £22,000 is worth now. It's sort of out of most people's reach money. Yeah.
And with the current rate of inflation, about £13 million.
Yeah. Something like that. Something in that region. And this guy has 60,000 manuscripts in his collection when he dies. Yeah. I have my own thoughts. Maybe we can keep that for a rant one day.
Yeah. For sure.
For sure. So full disclosure, I'm not a William Marshall expert, but I do know enough to tell you that I love him. I think he's going to be my favorite. He was born in 1147, and that's during the anarchy, this 15-year period where King Stephen's on the throne, but Matilda is trying to get to a throne. That's get the throne back. It's particularly unpleasant. This is the period where one of the chroniclers wrote Christ and his saints were basically asleep. There was famine, there was violence, obviously, there was, and it was just horrendous. And this is the period into which William is born. Clearly his parents weren't that put off by it all. His family had come over, or his grandfather had come over quite soon after the Norman conquest. So he is of Norman origin, if you like. His grandfather was called Gilbert Gifford, which apparently means Gilbert Chubby Cheeks. So that's nice.
I love that so much. Unchy, little Gilbert, Unchy.
He settled in England and built up quite a few lands. So he obviously did someone a few favours because by the time of the Domesday Book, he's in there with quite a bit of land in Wiltshire. His son John, so our Will's father, inherited those lands and aggressively expanded. So William's father was a one, John Marshall. I won't go into his story too much, but he ended up annulling his first marriage in order to make a peace alliance with his neighbour, the Earl of Salisbury. He married the Earl of Salisbury's sister, Sybil. Like I say, we're in the middle of the anarchy, but that didn't put John and Sybil off too much. They had 7 children during this time, 4 boys, 3 girls. The first 2 of the children were boys. William was the second, so he lost out on that lottery of primogeniture. he became the second, which of course would mean that eventually he wasn't in line to inherit any of these wonderful lands that his grandfather and father had built up. So then his father got into a bit of bother, and there's this in 1115 he basically he bought himself a position at court. John Marshall had. It didn't really bring much money with it, but it brought influence and that kind of thing that people like him like. When Henry I died in 1135, John had given his allegiance initially to King Stephen. This is right, obviously, at the beginning of Stephen's reign. And for that loyalty, he became the custodian of the royal castle of Marlborough. The problem with Stephen, one of the problems that landowners and barons at the time saw in Stephen was that they found him weak. So there's an incident somewhere down on the south coast, sorry, I can't remember where it is, where he had hostages or he won a battle and he should have slain them all, but he decides to let them all go. That clemency was seen as weakness, and that started to sort of put his conduct into question with some people. That was seen as a weakness, not a strength. So John started to switch allegiance to the more ballsy Matilda, maybe, I don't know. And he went and built himself a new castle right next to his other castle. Clearly, one castle isn't enough. And this was against Stephen's express wishes. So he builds this Motte and Bailey castle, and there is a siege of the castle. Stephen lays siege to this castle in 1152, and Stephen actually wins that battle, and he takes the now 5-year-old little William as a hostage, which this is not abnormal for this period where sons, we saw it when we talked about King John. King John was he didn't play it right either, but that sons would be taken by the opposition as hostage for good behavior effectively. But then John Marshall didn't keep up his end of the bargain. So at 5 years old, William Marshall is condemned to be executed as a punishment. But now whether his father knew, because of Stephen's reputation, that he probably wouldn't go through with it, and he probably was quote unquote safe to give his 5-year-old son over to Stephen as a hostage, whether that was anything to do with it or whether he was just a chancer and Stephen. But either way, Stephen, on hearing William on his way to be hung, not obviously realizing at the age of 5 what was about to happen, starts chatting to the Earl of Arundel about his sword or spear and asking him if he can have a go. And this apparently warms Stephen's heart, and he just can't have him executed. But John Marshall still isn't doing what he should be doing. I can't remember what he should be doing, but he certainly wasn't doing what Stephen wanted him to do. And so they then threatened to put little William Marshall in a catapult and
just
hurl him at the walls.
Hurl him into
150 quid for that these days.
He was supposed to hand over Newbury Castle, and he wouldn't. So they threatened to launch William into it.
Wow.
Then they threatened to use him as a human shield. Either way, they didn't. And William thought his dad was fabulous for this. He thought
Kids are weird,
later
to be
on.
fair.
Yeah, this is later on, but he doesn't seem to have had any sort of. He thought his dad did the right thing. I think basically he thought his father was admirable in his ballsiness. But that was probably. I mean, at 5 years old, you're looking at probably William's first memories are of being a captive, being threatened with being hung, catapulted, and used as a human shield. That's 5-year-old William.
Wow. It's worse than parkour, isn't it?
So anyway, so he's growing up. He's let's get into this. He's described as having, as he's growing up, not the 5-year-old clearly, such a fine figure of a man that no sculptor could have created one so perfect in every limb. Handsome body, finely built, brown hair, and impressively tall.
Oh.
So he had the looks, but unfortunately, because he's a second son, he had pretty much no prospects. His older brother's going to inherit everything that his father's built up. And in 1160, he is sent to one of his mother's kinsmen, the Lord of Tankerville, so Castle of Tankerville in Normandy. There's border conflicts and all sorts of stuff going on over there. So there's lots of battles to get his teeth into. And he's dubbed effectively a knight by the Lord of Tankerville before this first battle. And remembering that we get this information from the biography that is commissioned by his own family, it is very, very glowing of William. Because apparently even in his first ever battle, he outshines everyone on the field. He is the best. And everyone thought so.
Of course.
On whatever side they were on, they went, look at that, William. Isn't he great?
And so sexy.
And so sexy.
And so good at his horse riding.
Oh, just incredible. This man is
brave.
all round. Oh, just beautiful.
Did you ever watch Red Dwarf? It made me, when I was reading about him, it made me think about Ace Rimmer. What a guy.
What a guy.
What a guy. Smoke me a kipper. I'll be back for breakfast.
Now, he sustained quite a serious injury during this battle. So I actually, either I hadn't come across this before or I'd purposely forgotten about it. But in order to unseat riders, they had hooks, and they would try and hook somebody off their horse. And he had a massive shoulder. So like they got him in the shoulder. So he had a massive wound that obviously would scar him for life. And his horse was killed. He also didn't catch any hostages. And this was a way of, you would ransom your hostages. If you caught a hostage, you could ransom them back, make a bit of money after a battle. But he didn't have any hostages. So he'd lost his horse and he caught no hostages. So even though he had apparently gained the admiration of everyone on the field that day, he came out of it a slashed up pauper. So, and then the border conflicts in Normandy kind of settled down. So the Lord of Tankerville didn't really need him anymore. There was no opportunity to do anything else, to earn money, to whatever. And he had no horse, obviously. Remember, this is important.
Yeah,
He had no horse.
This is important, yes.
So the Lord of Tankerville reduced the number of knights and he gets rid of William, even though he was the best on the field that day, apparently.
No,
So
last in, first out.
last in, first out, yeah.
Mm.
That's true. So he's, I mean, 1160. When did I say he was born? So what is it? Ooh. When did I say he was born? 11. Let's do the math. 1147.
1146.
2013. No, sorry.
23.
No, I've forgotten.
Wait.
Yeah,
what you
47
said.
to 1160, maybe. Exactly when this battle is.
Let's just say early 20s is a ballpark figure.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
So his father died in 1165. Maybe it's around this time, so he's slightly older than what I just said. He went over in 1160. So, of course, his brother has now inherited all the lands and the position and everything. The second son, he doesn't get any of this. So he could go home and he could serve his brother, but that would be a little bit too easy. So what he decides to do is he sells literally the cloak off his back for 22 shillings and he buys a palfrey horse. Now, there's nothing wrong with a palfrey horse, but they tend to be the horses that you would use for traveling, They're more comfy. They don't jolt you around. He bought a palfrey and a pack horse. And he'd heard about these tournaments that you could go to, and that would be how you make your money. A bit like pool tournaments now, but a little bit more dangerous. So
a little bit.
Some of these pool halls are quite rough, Kat.
I mean, depending on where you're playing pool, I don't know of many places where part of the tournament is the very high chance that you might lose an eye, a limb, your life.
So maybe it would be equivalent of I don't know, becoming part of a underground bare knuckle boxing ring round. Like that.
It's Fight Club for really rich boys.
Yeah, but he hasn't got the right.
Early medieval period.
So, and this is becoming a big thing. It's a way of showing your prestige, and it's a way of earning money. And I'll explain how he would do that in a minute. Now, he's traveling on his own, but actually Tankerville and his remaining knights go along to this tournament because, you know, they've got no battles left, so they're a bit bored too. So he's allowed to tag along, and they're a little bit embarrassed. He's a little bit embarrassed to have this palfrey horse. I'm sure he'd have been all right on it, but anyway, this palfrey horse going into battle, because it's not a war horse. It's not a big horse, which is what you want. It's got a battle hardened horse. It's like going in with a Land Rover when you could go in with a tank, maybe. Anyway, so Tankerville gives him a horse, but the horse he gives him is a horse that basically the reason this horse is available is that no one else can ride it.
The horse is
psycho. It's secondhand.
So he gives him this psycho horse.
All horses are psychopaths.
Well, they are. Well, it's thick as cat, and it's because they know
what's in this case. They know what's coming.
Look,
I know what you're thinking.
I'm not a horse person. I was never a horse person, but because of the school that I went to and the circles I moved in, I was around horses more than I would have been, I think, in any other circumstance. So I know how to like put a saddle on a horse and tack up a horse and groom a horse. I can do all of it. And there are some horses that are stupid and biddable and do exactly as they're told. And there are some horses that are lazy but will ultimately do what they want. And there are some horses where you're like, who hurt you? Why are you like this? Well, I'm trying to feed you and you're being a hateful little fuck. Please go away.
I hate them. Sorry, I do. Fun fact about horses: if you melt them down, they take up less space.
They're a wonderful prick stick. There are some horses that you're minding your own business and the little fuckers will come up and just bite you on the back of the arse.
Yes. The little ones.
And it will leave you this purple bruise. Yeah. I was grooming a little pony and this shitbag was trying to kick me from the side. Like I wasn't even behind the bugger. It was trying to kick me in the prick.
That's little horses, like little dogs. They're all like
or little women.
Small women, animal complex.
Small but fierce. We'll cut you up.
They have little horse complex. So, but yeah, so these tournaments, they're like mock battles. So they will sort of pit against each other, two teams, and they sort of hit each other. But then the expanse to which this battle might take place is as undefined as a normal battle would be. So these battles can cover, these mock battles, but they're very, very close to the real thing, can just expand out over huge distances. Serious injury was common. Deaths wasn't unusual. It was seen as a training for real war, but it was also this chance to show how big your bollocks were and to earn some money. So this is what, I mean, so William is...
He's got the bestest bollocks, William the Marshal. His bollocks are the best bollocks in the world.
They are
the best bollocks in the world.
It says that specifically in the biography.
Yeah.
That was a
remake of it.
Cojones.
He had the cojones. So yes. So, but it was a chance to get some real money behind you, and that because if you caught, there was rules, I suppose, slight rules. If you caught a member of the opposition you could ransom them, or they would have to pay you a ransom, basically. And whatever they had with them, their horse, their armor, their weaponry, was yours to keep. So he comes out of this first tournament just north of Le Mans with, I can't remember, I wrote it down, 4 war horses. So he's fine now. He's got 4 war horses and other horses. I've got other horses now. But I think he ransomed. Yeah, he did have some hostages as well. So he got some cash behind him. But he also had got to show off his party piece.
His bollocks.
His bollocks. So when he is riding, so William Marshall's party piece was that while he is riding full pelt, let's say full pelt, I might not have read that, but I'm going to put it in there. He could catch hold of your horse while you're riding full pelt. He could hold onto his horse and get hold of your horse's reins and stop your horse and capture you like that. And this was his party piece, and he does this over and over again. So he's now got money, experience. He's earned respect, and he spends the next few years, I think it is, basically doing the circuit. So they're called tourneys, which when I look around what that means in French, it is sort of a tour or a round. So I almost think of it like the Formula One, where they go around for the year to different things. So it's all sort of the same people doing it in different places all the way around.
Hopping around France, beat each other up.
See you there, beat them up.
Yeah,
kick your ass.
Exactly. So he goes. So his second tournament ever, apparently. So he goes to Le Mans, then he goes to another one somewhere else. Doesn't really matter where. Anyway, in France, obviously. And he's declared the outright winner at that one. Only his second ever tournament. Outright winner. So he does become quite famous. But he returns to England in 1167, which makes him 20 when he returns to England. So I think he is doing this in his late teens. So he's independently wealthy now, and he has this reputation as a best
big
knight,
bollocks.
greatest knight, Billy Big Bollocks. Billy Big Bollocks. And so I will leave my part there.
Wow. What a
There we
guy.
are.
Didn't want to get teabagged by him, would you?
No.
What a guy.
Smother you.
That's another way he could kill you. Just suffocate. Anyway, that's enough. Philippa, are you doing...
Oh, sugar. Oh, yes. Hang on. Had forgotten.
If not, let's not do one this way.
I could do one if you want.
Yeah.
Do it.
Well, I've got one, but I haven't got it to hand, so I can't.
Oh, it would help if I could spell when I'm looking it up. Okay. I'm not sure that this was one that I meant to do.
That means you should definitely do it.
Okay. I hope I haven't done this before. Do you know what gorgonize means?
Okay, so it either involves some sort of troll, gorgon,
Turn
one
to
of those
stone.
things, or it's got organise in it with G at the front. Organising trolls.
Petrify.
Sort of. I could say I was gorgonized by William Marshall.
Frozen solid. Shocked into silence and awe.
Arranging your gorgonzola and other cheeses.
It's a cheese plate. No, it is. Yeah, you're mesmerized. So it's an early 17th century word meaning to have a mesmerizing effect on someone if you gorgonize them. It's what we do to many
everyone
of
we meet, really. Right? Yeah.
So stunning and brave. So stunning and brave.
That's an expression at the moment, isn't it? So brave and so stunning. Every time some sort of munter does something.
Every time someone does absolutely bugger all to it, yeah.
Like stunning and brave.
Stunning and brave to do, like, leave the house. Well done.
Wearing a sparkly top. Stunning and brave.
Getting dressed is hard, right? Look, okay. Outside is big and it's cold and there are people and
William
buses
Marshall
suck.
managed it. If William managed it,
Look, if I of an average fucking afternoon leaving the house end up with like the riches of 4 landed gentry fucks, I
Yeah.
might be more willing. But as it is, I've got to get on a twatting double-decker bus and deal with the absolute fuck nuggets that want to invade my personal space. And I'm telling you here and now, I don't know what's happening. If you have music or video on your phone, but you don't have headphones, don't play it in public. No.
isn't it odd? And it's
No.
not that long ago that it was that you wouldn't want even your phone out in public because it would be rude if it was in a space. You're really,
Yeah.
conscious of it. And now and then it got to the point where it's okay, but you don't really want everyone listening to what you're listening to or your phone calls, whatever. And then no, now they don't care.
No.
Was it Don Jolly, that comedian, who took the piss
Tinny
out of
shit music. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear your tinny shit music.
It's always
It's
tinny.
not. It's your phone is not wired for bass. We are not in the ocean rooms in Brighton. You aren't Mr.
Yeah.
Scruff. Go home. You're drunk. Sorry.
We live in London, though. London.
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 Everyone's an arsehole. Me especially.
They are, though. No, sorry, not you, but like
I am.
it's a different place.
You see, if you go up north, everyone's too poor to have a phone, so it's not an issue we have.
That's no, they've been eaten by dragons. That's what's happened.
Ah, yes.
There's leftovers.
So dragons
Or
make their living selling second-hand phones of their victims. How have we got here? Anyway,
I don't know. Let's go. Who's got the next bit? I want to
Catherine
hear more
has.
about the William, the Marshal.
the miniature. So yes. So I didn't mean to do that. Right. Anyway. I can't sit still. You probably will notice that over time. I can't sit still. So yes. So as Philip mentioned, William Marshall served 5 kings and 1 queen, and managed not to be murdered by any of them, which is a bit of a yay him, to be quite honest.
I can't now. Do one.
So he, and I'd sort of looked at the jousting and the tournaments and everything, because it really did underpin who he became and the reputation he had. And so it was one of the early ways where people sort of looked to him. And I think the only reason a lot of people didn't kill him was because they were wise enough, although they may have been stupid in many other areas, to realize this was a guy that was useful. He was useful in a lot of ways, and you were much better off having him on your side, doing what you needed and wanted him to do. He's no good to anyone if he's dead, is he? So it was kind of, and also as well as time goes on, you can see how faithful he's been to other people, and that has value as well, really. Whether you liked him or not, you didn't necessarily have to be BFFs with him to know that the guy was handy to have around. He ends up in various retinues. Horses were expensive, armor was expensive, so you had to make this money. So he was good at being a double hard bastard, he was good at making money, he was good at being quite sort of a little bit handsome, so he kind of ticked all the boxes, really. And he was being a knight was quite a new career path, and he was one of the first people to sort of do it professionally, and he was just very good at it, naturally. Now, Philippa also touched upon sort of the politics, particularly in Europe at that time, and it's very complicated. And especially if you are not interested in that type of thing, it's a little bit dry. So I haven't really gone into it, but there's plenty out there if you want to read about it. But it is a complex set of ongoing situations. Most of it involved people fighting France, which is fairly standard for this period. Because who are you if you're not declaring war on France, really? Anyway, he was with a retinue of Earl Patrick of Salisbury, who was his uncle, and he had a retinue of about 50 to 60 knights. And after he came back from doing all his tournament type stuff, he got a place in his retinue. And 1168, Patrick was called to bring himself and his retinue to France to fight alongside Henry II, who was king at this time, against the insurgents in Aquitaine. Now, he, of course, is married to Eleanor of Aquitaine, and there's been a bit of history there. Now, the people of Aquitaine don't really like Henry very much. They're not down with him at all. So he thought, wise move here. I'm going to give it to my wife to oversee it, because they're a bit keener on her than they are on me. And this was all fine. It was going well. And she had William Marshall with her. He entrusted this area and his wife to her. And then in April 1168, there was a battle, and Eleanor and her entourage were attacked. So Patrick told her to flee, got her out of there to get her to safety, and Patrick was killed. So, of course, everyone in his retinue loses their entire shit at this situation. And there was a big old fight, and William got a lance in his leg. It must have been a horrific injury, and he becomes a prisoner. And now, amazingly, despite the neglect and everything that he suffered during his period as a prisoner, the leg healed. And I say it was all right. It was probably a bit manky, but it was all right. Once again, this guy is obviously meant to be here, because whatever happens that should have killed off other people, he's like, no, it's fine. So anyway, Eleanor goes, yeah, I quite like this guy. He's handy to have around. So she is prepared to pay his ransom. So that's pretty impressive. She pays a good old ransom for him. And he has a position then in her retinue, which gives you an idea of how successful and well thought of he is at this stage. And he gained her trust and he stayed with her. Anyway, he also returned with her. So she came, her son, Henry the Young King, so one of her sons with Henry II. So Henry II is still alive. So this was a bit weird, but he had a coronation on the 14th of June, 1170. He came back with Eleanor to attend this coronation, and he became a confidant of Henry the Young King until his death. This lad didn't leave. I don't know how old he was when he mumped it, but he wasn't that old, really. So now, at this point, John, the next son, who we know as Richard the Lionheart, had Richard the Lionheart, he had control of Aquitaine, and John, who becomes King John, he had control of Brittany. So although Henry the Young King had this coronation, he didn't really feel he had anything. He had no power. He had nowhere to sort of exercise his right over, and he had the hump about this.
It did have a
Spoiled. All right, so he gathered a retinue of knights, including William Marshall, because they were quite good chums by this point, but he had no money to finance this retinue. It was a very expensive business. And so he was like, well, the only my option now is to just try and seize power, is to go in there all guns blazing and just try and seize power. So in 1172, off he went, and he saw Louis the Seventh of France, who agreed to support him. And went to him for an alliance and for some advice. Cash may have changed hands. I'm not sure. So he returns with all of this, and he comes back. And Henry II calls a conference of all the nobles and things like that. And Henry the Young King just kicks off. He gives it all of this. It doesn't work out, and he legs it back to Paris. Henry II's like, oh, bloody kids. Anyway, he's joined in Paris by his brother Richard, another brother Geoffrey, who mumps it later on, like quite early on, and William Marshall. And they form an alliance with the King of Scotland and a guy called Count Matthew of Boulogne. You don't really hear much about him, to be honest. And then in June 1173, he launched some attacks in France. And like a lot of these things, it goes backwards and forwards. It's all a little bit of a waste of time, really, because it ends in a stalemate. Eleanor of Aquitaine goes over to try and join her son, but she's captured by Henry II's forces. And also, so is Marguerite, who is the wife of Henry the Young King. So now Henry II's got these two women in his power, in his clutches. And he invades England. So back he goes. Back he goes to England, Henry the Young King, and he captures Norwich. I don't know why he thought Norwich was a good idea, but he did. So I wouldn't personally. But anyway, so Henry II has to come back to England again to sort this out. And he does. He takes back control of England. Now, William Marshall persuades Henry II to let himself and Henry the Young King go back to France. And then they become part of the tournament scene again. And they are both very successful. And so their reputation throughout Europe skyrockets again. And William Marshall becomes, by Henry the Young King, promoted above all others. He is his closest friend and confidant. So once again, he's up here, he's doing his thing. By 1182, Henry the Young King is all frustrated again. This success and everything isn't enough for him anymore, and he wants another rebellion because he hasn't learned from the first one that he's useless at it. So he gets this success, and he's helped support in the Angevin territories, which is quite useful. But then there's a rumor that William has slept with his wife. Now, there's no evidence of this, and obviously people are jealous of William Marshall's position. And so the likely is it's a rumour caused to stir up a rift. Now, he isn't punished for anything, but Henry the Young King goes quite cool on him, and the relationship is affected. So William Marshall takes himself off on a period of self-induced exile, goes on a pilgrimage. And he's away for a couple of years, and on his return, he's told he needs it, because William the Young King has decided he would back the rebels against his brother Richard in Aquitaine, because they hated Richard in Aquitaine as well. And Henry II decided to support Richard II, his son, as well. So things were really bad for Henry the Young King. He was kind of out in the cold, but William returned and gave him his support, and that gave him confidence to go back on the offensive. But Henry the Young King does something that was fairly popular in that period, is he contracted dysentery and he died. On his deathbed-ish time, he called William Marshall, thanked him, told him he was his closest friend, and said to him, "Please carry my cloak. If you could just nip over. I've nearly just lost my phone to a dragon, so if you could please hurry up, that would be great."
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, but he called William Marshall to him while he was obviously on the verge of mumping it, and said, "You are my closest friend and confidant. Thank you for all you've done. Here is my cloak. Can you take it to Jerusalem?" No.
Yeah, thanks for that.
What is in this for me at this point? Anyway, he dies in June 1183, and William Marshall goes, "Well, I said I'm going to do this now." Henry II's all gutted that his son's dead. 2,000 miles he travels with this cloak for the love of Christ. Anyway, he gets there.
Literally.
It is, in fact, for the love of Christ. That's what the Claim Crusade's about. Correct.
He's away for 2 years, which is quite a long time. Now, we don't know exactly what he did while he was there, but I'm sure he was being a double hard bastard again. But it seems likely that he fought to defend the region's Latin areas they were under attack from some guy called Saladin, the Sultan of Egypt, who was threatening Jerusalem. So it's likely he kind of stepped in and helped out with that. Because
he did love a good scuffle.
That's how he rolled.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. Anyway, he returned in 1186, and there's Henry II still there. And he appoints William a member of his household. Says, "No more tournament fighting for you, young man." But he travelled around with the court, and he was excellent in what they called courtesy. So a master of playing games of the games of the court. So he was very popular with everybody. He got land and money and castles and shit.
Sorry.
And it meant
this deserves a
make him
Snaps, Beverly. Snap.
Beverly.
It does in fact make him the Cape Crusader.
Love it.
Forget the greatest knight. He is Cape Crusader.
Cape Crusader.
And considering the number of times that I've seen people suggest, I know he doesn't play the Cape Crusader. Technically, he plays a Crusader in a cape. I have seen people recommend Henry Cavill as a possible William Marshall, and of course, he is Superman, which is a kind of Cape Crusader.
Rough. Yeah.
It's decreed in the stars that is Henry Cavill's next big.
How there isn't a film already about William Marshall?
I'm going to get onto that because there are, but we don't know about them, which probably means they're shit.
Well, they haven't got Henry Cavill in them, so what's the point?
No, I'm wondering if Uhtred is. I haven't heard anything about who Uhtred is supposed to be based on, but I'm wondering if it's a William Marshall character because of this. Well, as you're talking about,
there are a lot of parallels. To be fair,
there is a lot of parallels.
There are a lot of parallels. Yes. Right. So because he's minted and he's got all this stuff now, he can have his own retinue. So you've made it now, haven't you? Because you've got your own retinue. You've officially made it at this juncture. He's got a posse at this point. So in the late 1180s, there's war on the horizon abroad again. It's just a bit old now, isn't it? This war business. So Henry II asks him to go with his retinue, and he agreed, but he wanted lots of rewarding in advance. Shrewd. I like that. Henry II is in poor health, and while William's away, Richard has taken on the post as heir apparent with John after him. He's given it the big I am at this point. And so, but Richard had status, but not power. Again, so the same as Henry, the young king. Richard doesn't get dysentery, though. Anyway, there's lots of political stuff going on. It is exceptionally, what's the word I'm looking for? Confusing, complicated. But, you know, there's stuff going on in Jerusalem as well. It's all going down everywhere. So eventually Henry II gets a massive army. He marches to France. Because again, France. William Marshal is critical to his campaigning here. And he was promised that if he was successful, he would get the castle of Châteauroux. All right, which is presumably quite a posh castle and worth having. I don't know enough about French castles to tell you this. So this went very well, but no one was winning the war overall. Again. All right, so Henry II begins to retreat and his health is going right down at this point. It's the winter, the weather's awful, so you can't do much on the battlefield. So both sides agree to have a conference. Well, this is also a waste of time. Richard wouldn't agree to any of Henry II's terms, and then Henry II uncovers further treachery and so forth from his other son as well. He's really, really gutted, declares his son a traitor. But Henry II valued William Marshal and he gives him this castle, which was quite nice, really. So the Pope then wants both of these people to unite for a third crusade, because it's all right for the Pope sat out there out of the way, right, not having to get into any of this bother to defend Jerusalem. And people aren't massively up for this, but they have a conference. The conference fails. So William Marshal again is called to lead the Angevins against the French. And again, there's a battle. It's inconclusive. I mean, why anyone's even bothering at this point is beyond me, but there you go. So Henry II retreats. William Marshal goes with him, but Richard was literally now, I'm going to get my dad, on his presumably very posh horse. Here he comes. Okay. Right. So William Marshal's like, no. So he steps in, he stabs his horse, takes him down. Richard's on the floor going, oh, please don't hurt me, blah, 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 like this.
Not the face.
Not the face. Yeah. So Henry II escapes, gets back to a castle, and William doesn't kill him. And John finds out, Henry finds out John has also betrayed him. Very upset, very angry, mumps it 2 days later in a lot of pain. It was quite unpleasant. So Richard is now king. So this could have been bad news for William Marshal, because the last time they saw each other, he was trying to kill him in the mud. But Richard forgives him because he's clever enough to know that someone like William is handy to have around. He supports William's marriage to Isabel de Clare, the 4th Countess of Pembroke, which brings a lot of power and wealth to William. Lands, castles, all the same thing. And it does seem that love developed between them. As Philippa said, we have no evidence ever that he took any sort of mistresses or anything like that. And they had 10 children, which is nice.
No so TV, though, that's why. So.
No, well, yeah. And no phone to scroll through because the dragons have took it. Yeah. Anyway, Richard's king. Okay. And as we know, when we discussed him previously, he spends most of the time, he's off on crusades and pilgrimages and stuff. Yeah. So off he goes to Jerusalem, and William doesn't go. Richard's obviously worried about dying. So he kind of sort of gives John some money and assets and supports his marriage to Isabella of Gloucester, just in case. And also said to William Marshal, though, that you're going to be a key player in running this place while I'm gone. And William Marshal is very powerful in Wales and southern England, and he's developed this massive retinue of knights. Richard gets taken hostage on his way back from the crusade, and John's like, get in. I'm basically king now. And Philip of France agreed to back John as monarch. Eleanor stood for her son Richard. She wants to get him out of this situation. And William Marshal joined them and managed to successfully get Richard back. I mean, I'd have left him there personally, but there we go. So John, the bloke was an idiot, had signed away a lot of the Angevin lands, okay, to keep...
Did we do John and did we do Richard in our...
Back to back. Well,
okay, so if you want to look up a bit more...
Yeah.
These are big stories, but yeah.
Yes. And so anyways, he'd done this to keep Philip's support. So in spring 1194, England is taken back into control by John, because everyone's just sick of, by Richard, everyone's sick of John. John also, oh no, don't hurt me, I didn't mean any ill harm, blah, 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 blah. But they allowed John to fight in the English army against Philip. And William and his knights were crucial to this series of French defeats that happened around that time. And so most of the land Richard managed to get back. In 1199, Richard was struck in the shoulder by an arrow and died shortly afterwards.
Good shot, man. That's it.
Yeah.
Remember that.
And having told William to take control of Rouen, William was apparently quite upset. And then at this point, we have another contender for the kingy role, which is John and Richard's nephew, Arthur the first Duke of Brittany. Remember him? There's a Princess in the Tower air about him. Anyway, William Marshall supported John because he said, no, we need an adult, not a child on the throne. It's a fair point. It is a fair point. So John had a coronation. He invested William Marshall as an earl. So it's a very, very high-ranking position. He was first Earl of Pembroke and Sheriff of Gloucester. John was very weak. He sort of flip-flopped around. He accepted Philip as the ruler of all the Angevin lands, paid him 20,000 marks and married Isabel of Angoulême. So everyone's fuming. She's betrothed to somebody else. All sorts of shit hits every type of fan going. No one's impressed. It's bad times all round at that point in early medieval England. And what complicates the situation still further is Philip of France crowns Arthur on the continent. Okay, so that's just confused the issue still further. So William Marshall stops Philip's advance into Normandy with the help of the Duke of Salisbury, and they have a number of hostages, including Arthur. So the knights begin to turn on John. We all know why. You can read all about this and other things. And because they have found that John has starved some of his prisoners to death, which of course goes completely against chivalry.
He loved doing that. That was
He
his
did. It was one of his hobbies, but it
Mm.
goes against chivalric. I can't say it. Somebody help me.
Chivalric.
Thank you.
Yes.
Code. John loses control of a number of territories as a result of this, and Arthur mysteriously disappears.
No, he must have let him go free and live out his life in a beautiful part of Somerset.
Yeah, that's what happened.
I heard he died at the Battle of Stoke Field.
Yeah, he lived for another
Yes.
300
On and on it goes. Anyway, so John gave William Marshall a lot of important diplomatic duties, which was probably just as well because the bloke just couldn't make any sort of decisions for himself. But William had to pledge an oath to Philip, and John was furious. So William was kind of distanced from court and refused to fight for John in France due to the pledge he had made to Philip. But to show loyalty, he had to hand, Philip talked about earlier hostages, he had to hand his firstborn son to the king, and William's firstborn son was also called William because that's what they did. So William held claims to lands in Pembrokeshire and another place I can't pronounce if I'm being completely honest. And so he focused on these because he knew his position was on the spiral a little bit with John. And John said to William, "You must not go to Ireland." So William went to Ireland, and John lost control of all the fortresses in Carmarthenshire. I mean, it's just gone from bad to worse at this point. So the very short version, this is the cliff notes of what happened next, is William's kept under arrest in John's court and how his lands are being taken. So his wife launches a defence of her land. She's having absolutely none of it. John tries to breach the defences, and so William Marshall's knights to make them leave their posts. They don't want that. They stay loyal to William Marshall, their master. Okay. And other barons join basically with them to defeat John in Ireland. John calls a conference at Bristol, of all places, in March 1208. And he frees William Marshall, of course he does, on the condition that he swears loyalty to him, to John. So William goes, all right then, whatever. And they took Richard, another son of William Marshall, as a hostage. Richard returns from Ireland. He's a bit of a hero. He is. And is still in great rank in the nobility. By 1212, everyone ever hates John. And so he has his son Henry placed under guard, John does, because he's worried about what might happen to him. William manages to get 26 Irish nobles, apparently 26, to pledge allegiance to John. I don't know how he managed that, but apparently he did. And John returned all of the stuff he'd confiscated from William Marshall and more. So William's had another great result here, quite frankly. So John's been excommunicated. you know, as he was, because he was just an idiot. And in spring 1213, Pope Innocent III told Philip to invade England. So it was almost like a crusade against what was left of the Angevin kingdom. All right. And William Marshall and the others gathered their troops in Kent, like that. Obviously, that was
Come
important.
here. Come on.
Come on. And he negotiated with the papal legate, and John returned to the fold of the church.
No.
All right, because everyone hated him. So civil war was on the horizon because it was something to do. Hugh Magna Carta, you can read about that as well. And William becomes John's chief negotiator. What a job. And when you look at where Magna Carta is sealed, his name is first after the clergy, William Marshall's. That's quite fancy, isn't it? And the remainder of I've put 2015. I think we can be fairly sure I've written that down wrong.
Just
Oh,
12.
assuming so.
For the remainder of around that time, William Marshall watched Wales. He was keeping an eye on things there. There were engagements over various bits of land with the rebel barons. And he couldn't stop land being lost everywhere, but he did quite a good job. John had some successes in the south. The rebel barons turned to Prince Louis of France and said, look, if you can overthrow John, you can have it. You can be king of England. You can have the crown. We hate him that much. We'll give it to a French person. 2/3 of the nobility turned against John. Okay, but William Marshall remained at his side. John dies of dysentery.
Yeah.
Couldn't
have happened to a nicer fella.
Yes, William, his son. No, that's not right. Henry, his son, is only 9. So William goes to meet this little lad, declares his support because that's his MO, isn't it? And William offered him command of the king's armies, and he accepted. 1216, Magna Carta 2.0. It's got 40 clauses in it, and it bears the seal of William Marshall, which is pretty amazing. And it helped to really increase support again for the royalist cause after all the damage that John had done. So in 1217, it's a good year for the royalists. We have the Battle of Lincoln, was William Marshall's last battle. There's a link there to Nicola de la Haye. We're going to be talking about her. And it ends the conflict with Louis. And he basically goes, you might as well go. And he goes, yeah, I'm just going to fuck off because there's no point in me being here now. There's a siege at Dover Castle, and all the terms of peace are arranged between William Marshall and Henry III. So William is now the guardian of the realm and in charge of reconstructing England. So this is big stuff, and he does it very successfully. In January 1219, off he goes, William, to the Tower to resign. He's done. He's done his bit now. And from his bed, he undertakes his last state duty to select the next papal legate to succeed him. He is called to Henry III's bedside, wishes him well, tells him not to follow in the footsteps of his father, which I think is sound advice.
Mm-hmm.
And then his knights keep a vigil over their master. On Tuesday, the 14th of May, 1219, William Marshall died. His last gift to his retinue was a big scarlet cloak for their service. There was a long funeral procession. He's buried at Temple Church in London, covered by the clothes he bought in Jerusalem when burying his friend Henry the Young King. It's pretty impressive.
Mm.
He got a lot in.
Yeah. He did.
He packed it. He packed it right in. He packed it right in.
So what did I say?
Yeah.
He was born in. Someone's asking how old he was when he died.
He was born in
1146,
around
yeah, it's a circa.
1146.
And he died in 1219.
You did math.
54, 73.
There we are, 72, 73. And he'd gone into battle, so in his early 70s, his last battle, wasn't it?
Yeah, my favourite is there's a story from that they're besieging like a castle, and he climbs over the walls and like beats up an opponent, and he's really old. And he basically bests this guy, but he's so tired he has to take a seat on this unconscious man's chest. He's like, I'm tired now. I got nays.
He is a legend. He is.
He did a big climb and a big fight.
It's an impressive state of affairs, isn't it? I have to say. So,
yeah. Do we have a? a situation, or for time, shall we hop along? What's the plan? Where have we gone?
I have to be back on live at 3, but as long as I don't know, Kat, if you can.
I will whistle stop tour through it, and let's
Okay.
just do this quickly.
Okay. Yep.
I was like, what am I doing? Am I doing it? Am I not doing it? Am I doing it?
Do
Am I
it.
not doing it? Do
It's
it.
time for the
Do
widows. Time for the widows of Lancaster.
it.
Ooh.
We're here.
Go musical today. Dear widows.
Paige says he sounds like a storybook character, and yes, I'm going to get there. That's coming next, babe.
Dear widows, I bring to you my tale of my woes in love.
Oh, God.
I am the only daughter among 6 siblings in an extremely high status family. I am expected to make a good marriage. There were a number of potential suitors within our circle as I grew up, some of whom I would have felt happy to have been betrothed to. But recently, another gentry family moved into our area and were on the lookout for a bride for their eldest child, who was their only son. I cannot describe to you how unpleasant and cruel this man is.
Oh.
I have yet to find a soul who can find a decent thing to say about him. Yet my parents have said that they would be agreeable to a match. I would rather saw off my own foot than marry this man. Matters
Like,
have
get
been,
you out of it.
that's just a hop down the aisle. Matters have been further complicated by the fact that I recently met an extremely kind, caring, and handsome man, 2 years my senior and free for marriage. But he is from a farming family. My family would never agree to a marriage, but he is simply perfect for me. I could run away and be with him, but they would disown me and I would lose the life of luxury and privilege that I have always known, and I'm not sure I could cope without. Instead, I would have to spend half my life up to my knees in pig excrement. Do I choose happy in love with a pitiful financial existence, or continue to live in the lap of luxury with Satan's best friend? Please advise me, as time is running out and I am desperate. Mavis.
Well, we know the answer. It's really clear.
Yes. Yeah, Mavis. There's only one answer. And that is, I'm sure Philippa is going to say that you marry Satan's best friend.
Yeah.
You ensure it would probably be preferable if you could at least get knocked up with a son who therefore has an interest in the inheritance. I mean, depending, it may not be male preference primogeniture. Any child will do. Doesn't even have to be your husband. He just has to claim it. Make sure the will is ironclad, and then you poison that motherfucker.
You do.
That's what you do.
But
and
then how does she still
don't
get
marry the farmer. Don't marry the farmer. You have the control of the estates. You have a life interest in the estates while you are bringing up your children. Do not remarry. Bring the farmer in to look after your lands. So
Never
you
called
can
her
also
as
look
it
after your lands. He can tend to your garden, and he can tend to your garden. Okay?
Yes. Yes.
Yep.
Right.
That's it. That's absolutely.
Weezy's put, get thee to a nunnery.
I mean,
that is
the other alternative is as Deborah says, kill the husband, feed him for the pigs, make it look like he's disappeared. And thus, you're still a married woman in control of the estates, waiting for your husband to return, and he's never going to return.
So no one
He's
can
gone on a
claim
pilgrimage.
the estate.
That gives you several years grace, that does. He's gone on a pilgrimage. He's fine. He'll be back soon.
Yeah, he's gone on a crusade.
Yeah.
No ages on anything.
Yeah.
Huzzah.
Exactly. Plenty of leeway.
I think we've sorted our life out for
Right. There we go. Happy to help. Right. I'm going to whistle stop tour through this. As Philippa rightly pointed out, William Marshall does have a biography written about him, which is commissioned by his family, I think principally by his sons. That does mean that that is the first extant biography of an English person who is not a monarch, which is quite impressive. And it is, when we're talking about why is William Marshall being added to our heroes list, what is his legacy, which is kind of the bit that I'm doing, I think that this history of his life and the way it's been interspersed with myths and stories and legend is absolutely fascinating. I think it's part of the reason why we continue to have this perception of him as the greatest knight, the coolest person in medieval England. And certainly he has this reputation for unbreakable loyalty. But somebody was talking earlier that he has a loyalty to the crown. Not necessarily. He appears to have an unbreakable loyalty to the person that he has pledged fealty to. That does not mean obedience, because there are times where William Marshall is disobedient in the extreme. The first being that first fight that he really distinguishes himself in, but loses everything. He is a barely qualified knight. And he, at the time of this battle, he is like full of piss and vinegar. And he's revving to get to the front. And he is told, off you fuck back. First of all, there are much more established knights who have a right and a duty to be at the front here. Who the fuck do you think you are? Off you pop. And he's like apparently cowed by this. Nevertheless, as they're crossing into the battlefield, he still pushes his way to the front and ends up losing his horse, fucking losing everything, but distinguishes himself in valor and battle. He has been loyal to the person who's brought him there, but not obedient.
I think that's why they don't recompense him.
Yeah,
for that reason. It's like
he's a loose cannon in some respects, and so there is this kind of. And his loyalty is seen as being this incredible benefit, but in some ways the fact that it's a benefit to him is in part luck. As we've pointed out, he serves successively people who were over enemies of each other. It is miraculous that at no point is he done for treason and dealt with. He killing Richard I's horse underneath him. And then when Richard comes and William the Marshal is keeping vigil over his father, Richard is essentially like, you tried to kill me. And William's response is, babe, if I tried to kill you, you'd be dead. I didn't try to kill you. And Richard's like, you are the man for me. He's either this incredibly astute judge of character that he knows exactly what to say to win the loyalty and the encouragement of people who otherwise would have reason to punish him, or he is a person who is lucky because of the times he lives in. I'm going to read a quote towards the end, and hopefully we can quickly weigh into it. One of the things, though, talking about this kind of meshing of myth that happens, I think another thing that really propels William Marshall into the realms of myth making is the last thing that he is supposed to have done on this earth, which is, and this is the reason why he is buried in Temple Church, is that he commits himself to the Knights Templar. And we could perhaps do a whole video on the Knights Templar. But even at the time, it's now, of course, Da Vinci Code, etc. It is completely enmeshed into a world of fictive myth making. But that is happening while in a contemporaneous time to William Marshall. And in certain cycles of Arthurian legend, the Templars begin to feature. So in the Arthurian romance cycle, the real Templars become characters. And then mapped onto that this is where the Grail starts to come in. So in the myth of Arthur, when they feature the Templars, you then have the Holy Grail, or the Grail that becomes the Holy Grail. And so by aligning himself to that banner, to those individuals who are themselves, I suppose the closest equivalent of the Templars at this time, they are like the SAS, Navy SEALs. They are an elite fighting force. There is they're like Green Berets. There's an enormous cachet about being part of this. And then on top of that, they are connected to the Arthurian legend and this sort of Christ-like reliquary. And so William Marshall becomes indelibly intertwined with that story. And his burial at Temple Church is indelibly intertwined with that story. Then, of course, the narrative around Richard I and King John becomes in time linked to Robin Hood. And so we have another really proliferating myth of Englishness and martial prowess and loyalty, namely Robin Hood. And William Marshall's story also becomes a feature of that. And so the myth of Marshall is absolutely intertwined with the myths, I think, of England and of national identity shaping.
Wow.
And then on top of that, the effect of Magna Carta, which in itself over time has become a mythologized document, people fundamentally misunderstanding what Magna Carta is and using it as some kind of legal constitutional protection in a way that it doesn't function, because that also has become a document of myth making. And I find it really fascinating that it's a Gordian knot to untie and figure out where, I suppose, a kind of emotive mythologized feeling about things compared to the history where the truth lives. And I find that incredibly fascinating. In the DMB article about him, there's a whole thing about Marshall and the historians. And I just want to read a quotation from it. It says that where are we? It's just skipped. Oh, so here it is. It points out that it rather than this kind of just pronounced and continuous success, it points out that constant misjudgment in pursuing his own interests brought the Marshal down in 1205. His tired decision to retreat into self-imposed exile in Ireland in 1207 should have been the end of his active career. But King John's own difficulties, the Marshal's undeserved reputation for political wisdom, and his deserved reputation for military success pulled him out of retirement. His luck was that he was the ideal man for the moment in 1216. And his greater luck was that that moment was not so prolonged as to reveal his political weaknesses. Perhaps, too, by this time, his great age made it easier for him to command obedience and respect. Now, that is one historian's impression of William the Marshal. And I think it's interesting to sort of throw in there that is the hero as bound up in that myth as so much the rest of the story. And something that I think is also interesting is that there's often talk about how it's weird that there's not a William the Marshal film. But William the Marshal does feature in numerous novels. He's in William Shakespeare's King John. He's a feature in quite a few films. He's a minor character in The Lion in Winter. He is a more major character in Robin Hood stories, for example, Ridley Scott's Robin Hood story. He's also in other kind of Robin Hood films. So there's one called The Bandit of Sherwood Forest. There was a film in 2011 called Ironclad. I'm not familiar. Maybe people are.
What year, sorry?
It's a 2011 film called Ironclad.
Oh.
And there is a character in it. The central character in it is titled Marshall. And he is played apparently by James Purefoy. And apparently that is loosely based on William the Marshal, although perhaps the most famous version of William the Marshal, although he's not called William the Marshal, is the Heath Ledger character in A Knight's Tale. So
okay.
that is, I suppose that's what I kind of want to think is like, how much of the question I suppose I'm posing to you and to everybody else is, how much have we been instructed to hero worship William the Marshal because that's what his first biographer tells us to do, and that's also influenced by the choices that he makes that tie him to a mythology that I think is very powerful. Those are my words.
I mean, he was obviously, I mean, we've joked about him being a double wild bastard and all these types of thing. You've got to have a little bit of something about you to go out there and continuously be that bloodthirsty.
Yeah,
this of his time, but like,
I think he enjoyed the physicality of it.
You know, obviously had the mindset that that's what you had to do to get where you needed to be, and he wasn't scared of. I don't know. Does that make him? It makes him very good at what he did. But are we going, oh, he was lovely and brave and big and strong and everything? Are we confusing that with?
I mean, the thing is, he is like a character out of an Arthurian romance.
Yeah, you know, yes, that's what I was.
He's Lancelot.
I think he's more of a hero in the traditional sense of a hero. He's physically capable. He's willing to do what's needed. He's loyal to the person he's sworn loyalty to.
Yeah.
I really am wondering with your comment, with your comment earlier about the well, he's a provider. He is a provider. But I'm wondering with your comment there about him sort of going into semi-retirement and then being called back. I'm pretty sure again. So I know I keep going on about it, but I'm really wondering, and I'm sorry I don't know this for a fact, but really wondering if the Uhtred character in Last Kingdom is loosely based on William Marshal, because that happens as well.
Yeah, it is that same pattern of changing who.
Yeah, I know it's set in
pledged allegiances, and you.
Yeah, I know it's set in a completely different time, so it's not supposed to be about him. But obviously, Last Kingdom is sort of it's based on stuff, a bit like Game of Thrones is. You can kind of see.
I think. I mean, it wouldn't at all. He's such an evocative figure, and I think the other thing about him that I think is interesting is that he one of the kind of first or earliest or most famous early examples of at least some kind of social mobility. I mean, the way in which I mean, obviously he has the training. He's comes from a privileged position. He has the training that he learns how to like smash in faces effectively, but that he goes from being a second son and, you know, a kind of forgotten and discarded household retainer to being the person who was the protector of England, who managed to... Pardon me?
Well, because everything he has, he's earned.
Yeah.
He's literally earned it. He didn't have it. And he's gone and earned. So I know he has a background, but what he ends up with is not given to him. He's gone and got it.
Yeah. I mean, we know very, and the dynasty that he founds, like the kind of, if you look at the sort of the people, the names of the people that his children marry into. So, you know, obviously the boys, we've got the Marshalls, they don't have children. So the male line ends with his sons. However, his daughter marries an Earl of Norfolk and then marries an Earl of Surrey, William de Warenne, a name we hear. His daughter Isabel marries Gilbert de Clare. Then the Earl of Cornwall. There's one of his daughters marries the Earl of Derby. Somebody else marries into the Brioza family. So these are names that still ring down in the kind of making of the nation, of the making of the empire. And I find that it's not all myth. It's absolutely not all myth. But I do wonder if some of the things that happen seem like they are the just rewards for his loyalty or his forward planning. I think in certain instances, the continued progression, survival, and advancement has a healthy dose of right place, right time, right skills, luck.
And of course, we're getting this from the account written or soon after his death, but commissioned by his family. But then that's an unusual thing to do. In fact, it's a unique thing probably to have done, unless we come across manuscripts of anyone else who's not like you say, a king before that time. So it's a unique thing for them to have thought about even doing, let alone get done. So that gives that says to me there's more of a motivation than just we want our dad to have a book written about him.
No,
there's a thought there that what this man has done requires being written. It needs to be written down and recorded. And it's going to be favorable, but at its core, it is actually supposed to be a record of what he did in his life.
Really good point, actually. Yeah.
I think. Imagine being his sons and growing up in the shadow of that.
Maybe that's why they didn't bother carrying on.
Yeah, maybe like, we're done now.
They didn't put us in a catapult and nearly get us executed at the age of 5. What a hero.
Yeah,
I know, right? Yeah.
What was it? They said that you've broken the cycle.
Yeah. They went wrong. He could have didn't.
I mean, the thing is, what's clear is the fact that they were, you know, we talk about him being a faithful and a loving husband. The fact that he generated a kind of affection with his family that they would want to do this, I think points to the fact. So he has this capacity for extraordinary, mind-numbing violence, but he can also be a loving husband, a loving father, and a courtier that can get along with very aesthetic people.
I think that's because that violence has a purpose. He's not reported as having a temper, or, you know, it's controlled violence. It's for a purpose. It's on a battlefield.
It's not necessarily gratuitous.
No. Yeah. So
no. But in a way, I find that kind of cold-blooded violence chilling.
But he's on everyone else on the battlefield. They're there for a purpose, aren't they? They're there to do that. He's not.
If you're brought up like that, then you don't. We're told that we shouldn't do that, and it's barbaric, and it's this, and we go, oh no, that's awful. But if it's going on left, right, and centre around you, it's very horrific.
We are privileged to be able to not have to witness it, be involved in that. Yeah, that's not human. That's not human history. That's not human beings across the globe right this second. We are very lucky to be able to stand in judgment on that kind of behaviour.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah, and I think he used it when he needed to use it, and that's, you know. And I do think that skill of being able to catch someone else's horse while you're on a horse, I would have liked to have seen that.
Yeah, and just to drag them away from the battlefield, like to just be like, this time I'm kidnapping you. You and your horse are coming the fuck with me, and they're like, oh, okay.
Before they knew what they could do about it.
I'm impressed with that. Yeah,
wild, amazing.
I still like him a lot.
I'm looking forward to scoring him. I mean, I think I was looking for reasons to kind of go, okay, he's great, but he's not that great. And basically all I can come up with is we should in certain parts of it, we should perhaps not attribute his evident successes to any kind of foresight on his part. I think there are certain times where in any other circumstance, it would have been absolutely the wrong fucking move. But conflicts broke out when they broke out, and people got dysentery when they got dysentery. Hello, thumbs up. And all of that, in part, has served to support him. But in itself, that doesn't mean he's not a hero.
He does it over and over again, though. There's only so many times you can just be in the right place at the right time and do the right thing. One thing you could say about him, though, is his conversion, his oath to the Templar Knights happens on his deathbed. It happens at the point at which he wouldn't have to give up any of his luxuries, which was one of the things.
It's easy to make a promise that you don't have to see through.
He didn't do it at the time where actually it wouldn't have suited his lifestyle. He does it right at the end. So that's
Yeah.
one thing you could say was a little bit cynical, maybe.
Yes. But on the flip side, the Templars accepted it because they recognised the value of having William the Marshal as part of their order, even in death. So it was a mutually beneficial arrangement.
Quite. Yeah.
So
yeah. Ladies, we are at an hour and a half.
Yes, you've got to get online in like half an hour.
I'm back on at 3:00 with my tea time live.
Yeah, I've got to go and collect my children. Philippa, what's happening next week?
Next week, sorry, that was rather loud. It's F in sign language. We are talking Florence Nightingale next week.
Estelle. Florrie, and we're back at the normal time. We're going to be back in the evening tide.
And we're
early because
ourselves.
We weren't here last week because I had plague, and we're doing it at this time because Philippa's out tonight. She's out on the razzle dazzle.
And we didn't want to cancel another one. Yeah. So
she's out on the razzle dazzle. So here we go. I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed a 1 o'clock soiree.
Soiree.
Work better in the daytime.
Yeah, I'm more functional than I expected. Things to know about us. We've got merch.
We have
mugs and t-shirts and sliders that say "No Fig Free" on the internet. We've also got loads. We've got our beaver merch. Inner Ruffs. We've got Rough Beaver merch. If you want to check out our Rough Beavers, please do. You can find it in our link tree. The information. You can also find it on the. We are at. What is it?
Oh, which one do you want?
Where we can go to find the merch stuff.
Teespring.
Or it's in our link tree. Also,
whatever it is, it's in our link tree.
If you want to support us, you can buy us tiny Winnebagos at www.buymeacoffee.com/Heads That is also a place to come if you would like to join our close friends on Instagram, which is mostly the place that Catherine drops the depraved memes that she finds online. She sends it to us first, and we go, "That's disgusting." And she's like, "Close friends." We're like, "Yeah, I think so."
CF.
Yeah, CF, which always reads to me as cheeky fucker, and I'm like, what have I done? Probably, yes, cheeky fucker. Yes, I am correct. But you are our cheeky fuckers and our close friends if you come over there. What else? Is that it?
That'll probably do for now.
Yeah.
Yes. We'll see you all next
don't
week.
forget to like, subscribe, write things, do the things.
Yes, leave a comment. If when you subscribe, hit the bell icon next to the subscribe button and then select all in the drop down that will appear. And allegedly, if it feels like it, YouTube will tell you when we're next going live. But the next time we are going to be going live, barring more plague, will be at 8:15 next PM.
I know what to mention. The US's clocks have changed. I don't know if anywhere else in the world has done their spring forward, but ours don't change until the end of March. So whatever the normal time difference, it's going to be slightly different. So if you're used to us going live at a certain time, it might actually be a slightly different time for the next 3 weeks until
when you drop down your what's-its, as Kat said, ask for the notifications because then you'll get a heads up.
Get the notifications. Have a look on Instagram. We try and post the link to this in Instagram on our Instagram stories as well.
I mean, also, if we're going to we just need to have a word. If we're going to do this daylight saving time things, whoever's doing it, we need to do it all on the same day globally. This is bullshit.
We should stop doing it. It's
ridiculous. Anyway, thanks for hanging out with us this early in the day. And if you're watching the playback, thanks for watching on the playback. And we're looking forward to chatting with you all at the regular time next week.
Yes. I'll see some of you in 27 minutes.
Right.
Roman London today.
Oh, cool.
Oh, nice. Right. I'm going to count us down. We're going to go in 3, 2, 1. Bye.